So this next video is all about outlining what the various pay-per-click phases are from when you're launching a product to when you're growing and scaling to when you're in the more mature phase of just maintenance. We're going to talk through each of the campaigns that we like to run in each of those phases and how you discreetly manage the pay-per-click strategy and the optimization during each three of those. We're also going to get into just some basics on how to use the campaign dashboard within Amazon Seller Central, how to access your 30-day search term reports and other ad reports, how to access bulk files, and ultimately some of the bidding strategies that you can implement when you're managing your pay-per-click. So the purpose of this video is really just to outline the campaigns we typically leverage at various phases of a product's lifecycle and how we manage and optimize them over time. One thing to keep in mind is that pay-per-click performance and goals are different during different phases and success points of a product life. So your playbook for a product that's brand new is going to be different than one that's 2 years old. Your playbook for a struggling ASIN is going to be different than a playbook for one that's doing really well and is a market leader. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach, but these methodologies can be used to apply in different scenarios and in different phases. Also, in early life cycle, you can typically expect to be less profitable or unprofitable with heavy experimentation and optimization. So there's a lot of heavy lifting. It's much more dynamic earlier in a product's life cycle versus one that's more mature and you've already kind of stabilized those Pareto pay-per-click words that are bringing in most of the sales. It's much more about just bringing in the profits, maintaining, maybe doing some minor experiments. So the first phase is really the launch. And I look at this as a discrete 30-day period. While the total launch phase for a product and honeymoon for a product might be 60 to 90 days, we like to use a very prescribed and specific set of campaigns during that first 30 days. Our main goal during this phase is to index for the right words, those relevant words that we believe matter coming out of the keyword dominator assessment. We also want to optimize and leverage the honeymoon period to drive rank. This is why we focus explicitly on manual exact terms and very specific campaigns and don't do a lot of those research auto broad phrase type campaigns early on. We want to direct the Amazon algorithm during this period. We want to explicitly tell them what we should be indexed for and what we're relevant for. Again, to do this, we're going to be using focused campaigns using manual research. So we're not relying on algorithms or auto-generated stuff, anything like that. We're going to actually prescribe and show the Amazon algorithm precisely what our products are. And then we're going to also stop campaigns that are hurting rank. Even if we've identified them manually and they're words that we think are relevant and we should rank for, if we start to see underperforming pay-per-click, we want to stop those during this phase because it can have a detrimental impact on our ability to get organic rank. And during this phase, it's typically on the low end if you're really kind of humming and have a great offering, typically going to be about 45% ACoS on the low end, but oftentimes you're going to be north of 60, 70% ACoS during this phase. Again, you don't have reviews, you're not optimized yet, you're trying to figure out what the best words are, and so typically there tends to be unprofitable ad spend up to about 100%. I still like to keep things under 100% ACoS during this phase, but it could be a pretty big swing and expect to actually be investing money, not making money off your pay-per-click during this phase. The next phase is pretty long. I would look at it kind of from the end of that first month all the way up to 6 months. So some you can grow and optimize faster than others. Some take a lot more experimentation and management than others. But generally speaking, it's going to be that like month 2 to 6 where you're really kind of trying to scale all these other ad types. You're really trying to optimize things, test things, figure out what those keywords are. So we're going to roll out our workhorse research campaigns. So while in that launch phase, we were focused explicitly on manual exact primarily, this is when we roll out the auto campaign, the broad, the phrase, and a lot of other campaign types that we'll actually show explicitly here in a second. We're going to try to find our high performing words here. That's another main goal. And we're going to want to identify our low performers. We're kind of pruning the tree at this point, right? We're starting to shape those keywords that matter for our listing and really dialing those in. We're also going to experiment a lot here, right? You're going to make some mistakes during this phase as you roll out new campaign types and try to figure out the words are, so expect to experiment. And then finally, this is a kind of a phase where you're optimizing daily, weekly, right? So depending on how much time you have, the constraints you have in your business, etc., every couple days at least is ideal, but at a minimum, we want to be doing this weekly. And then during this phase, we're kind of starting to bring our ACoS in line as you start to get more towards that 6-month mark. You should start to be driving towards that break-even point. So your ACoS here should really range typically between 35 and 60%. It's not going to be perfect yet because you're doing a lot of experimentation, but it shouldn't be going off the rails either because you've got reviews, you've started to get data accumulated where you can really optimize your decisions. And the final phase is maintenance, and I kind of look at this as the post 6 month period. The dust should have settled. You should kind of know what words matter. You should be optimizing everything into single keyword campaigns. Your bids and budgets to start to get dialed. So at this point, you're really just kind of managing and throttling your budgets. You want to make sure that you're feeding enough money to those, especially single keyword campaigns that are converting well. You're going to be monitoring your pay-per-click to organic rank correlation and potentially reducing your spend on advertising if you feel like your organic ranks are there. You're going to be targeting new entrants. Obviously, there's new competitors after the 6 month period that you're typically going to see. You may need to regain rank. So you're really kind of looking at old words. Hey, where am I losing ground? Is there new elf ASINs? Trying to get and claw back to those words that matter and those rankings that matter. Typically, we're going to test monthly experiments at this point, so you don't need to be as iterative as those other earlier stages. And we may want to test creative, especially if we've got videos or we're doing sponsored brand headlines. Test some new imagery, test some new photos, test new sequencing and cadence with your video ads, and just see if you can really optimize that conversion rate. And then we're really looking at optimizing weekly and monthly here. So it's a little bit less incremental work when you've got these more maintenance-oriented SKUs. And really here, we should be within at least 5 to 10% of our break even, ideally below break even at this point. So let's say that your break even ACoS is 45%. We kind of want to be at or below that ideally, or if we're aggressively pursuing rank, you don't want to be much more than 5 to 10% above your break even. And again, you want to closely be monitoring what the pay-per-click to organic rank correlation is, especially if you're going to be over break even. So coming back to the Heist pay-per-click matrix here, this is just an outline of all of these different campaign types that we talked about in a previous video here. And all we've done here is just really break them into different phases. So you can see here during the launch phase, we're not doing any auto campaigns. We're not doing any broader phrase. We're really focused on either exact or single keyword exact campaigns, as well as product targeting of competitors. We covered all of this in our launch pay-per-click session if you want to look at that in detail, but it's really a small finite amount of both keywords and targeting types that we're looking at here. If you do have video assets as well, this is a time where you could create using your kind of target one keywords. You could create a campaign with a video ad as well and serve that up. Again, you're not going to get as many impressions as you are with the standard keyword targeting, but you will get some. So if you've got video assets, I would definitely deploy them just in an exact targeting way here. So we're not trying to do auto, broad, phrase, etc. As you move from that kind of 30-day launch period into the growth phase, there's really a couple different approaches depending on how much money and budget you have, depending on how aggressive you want to be, and probably depending on the competitiveness and depth of the particular category you're targeting. But there's two different approaches. I'll just kind of look here at the conservative because that's the most common one. Here we could start to add our auto campaigns, close match. I typically still like to stay away from these loose substitute complements at this stage. Maybe when it's a little bit more mature, you can experiment with those. But you tend to get a lot of funky stuff when you add those in here. So I'm layering in these auto campaigns, but still doing it in a focused way during growth. Maybe on the back half, that month 4, 5, 6, you may want to kind of throw some other ones in here. But typically, we're going to target close match auto. Then we're going to add the broad phrase into this mix as well. So we've got some more of those research worker campaigns trying to uncover new keywords for us. In addition to competitors, we may actually want to target our own products here as well. Whether you've got a fleet of SKUs, you can retarget with other SKUs, or you can even target your own ASIN with your own product targeting ads. So we tend to roll that out, especially as we start to push more traffic to our listings using the full orchestra of traffic. And then you're going to maybe test some stuff, pushing some traffic to your store, again, using exact, maybe targeting competitors and other products here. We don't do a lot with landing pages, but you may want to do some stuff with the store spotlight here as well. And then this is where we really start to open up, similar to the manual campaigns. We want to open up our video campaigns if we've got video assets. So we're adding the broad phrase targeting as well to the mix. We also might integrate some single keyword exact as well. It's kind of a pain in the butt because for every keyword, you've got to reapply the creative and get Amazon to approve it. So it can be a big pain in the butt to upload this, and there's no way to do it with bulk files, at least as of the shooting of this video. But if you do have some real winners that have come out from this launch campaign and you're like, man, these like 4 words, we're just killing it with the video. Now may be a time to split them out into their own single keyword targeted video campaign as well. And then depending on your brand, you may actually want to do some product targeting on competitors in my product with some display. So this is under the buy box, under the bullets, things like that you can roll out. We're typically not doing any retargeting here. If you're running a supplement brand or something that actually is a potential multi-purchase, you may want to turn on the retargeting here, especially retargeting of sales in the more aggressive case. But generally speaking, we're not getting too fancy even in this phase into DSP and others. And then for the maintenance phase, kind of depends, right? It depends on whether you've got like a ASIN that's absolutely killing it and you're just dominating organic rank. Sometimes in those cases, we're actually pulling back on pay-per-click, not getting more aggressive. So we're more like, hey, we've got the words that matter. We're actually ranking well organically, so we don't need to spend as much on ads. We may just kind of sit and kind of stabilize it and maybe run the odd experiment, test some new campaigns here and there. If you're actually lagging and you're not seeing the performance you want, or maybe you like had a great launch and now it's starting to kind of decline a little bit, that's where you might roll up the sleeves and sprinkle in a little bit more of these kind of growth aggressive campaigns as well. So maintenance is just much more about, you've got a lot more data now. You've got a lot more understanding of the campaigns that are set up for single keyword targeting, and you're just kind of farming at this point and maybe adding strategies depending on whether you're leading the space well organically or whether you're losing ground. The other thing I wanted to talk about is just monitoring some of the high level performance. We're going to get into this obviously in the metrics dashboard and Apex and some of these other tools. But if you just want a high level understanding of how to navigate Seller Central and also access things like your search term report and your bulk files, we're going to just dive into the Amazon account right now so you can see what that looks like. So within your Amazon account, you're just going to want to go to the advertising campaign section, and then you're going to get a dashboard like this, which is basically for different time periods going to show you kind of some high level performance. It's going to have all your campaigns here down below. You can come over here and you can actually edit this date range if you'd like. So maybe I want to kind of see full September performance instead of the first week in October. And then it's going to update this so you can see all of the new data, all the high level stuff. If you want specific metrics you want to track, like let's say I wanted to throw in ROAS, I can check ROAS here. So this could be kind of your hub if you're ever in your Seller Central account and just kind of want to see how things are humming along. This tends to be a pretty solid dashboard. What's good about this as well is that you can go back in time more than just 60 days. So if you want to look at like the full annual data, you don't get that kind of level of detail in your search term reports, but you can get that level of detail here at a summary level within your ad dashboard. So let's go over here to just the reports so you can see where some of the reports are. So a big one that we're going to pull when we're analyzing performance is going to be the sponsored product search term report. If you're doing this for the first time ever, you probably want to pull a 60-day report. But typically we're going to pull this every 30 days. And this is something that if you ever wanted to see how your campaigns are doing in an actual spreadsheet, and if you ever want to optimize your bids using the pay-per-click dominator or Apex, this is one of the core reports that you're going to use. The other key thing about the search term report is that let's say that we're using an auto phrase or broad campaign, and let's say that the word is golf push cart was the root word that campaign was targeting, but we ended up converting on black golf push cart. This is the report where you can start to see and isolate those new terms that are emerging that you're getting conversions on from your research campaigns that you can then migrate into your single keyword targeting manual exact campaigns. So it's really the raw data that we will cultivate to uncover winning keywords, to optimize our bids using some of the tools, and optimizing the bids using some of the tools we've been developed. So this is where you access that report. There's also, search term and share impression reports. There's advertised product reports. There you can look at sponsored brands versus sponsored products. You can look at sponsored brand video. All these different kind of campaign types. You can pull all those raw reports here, hit run, and then you download them into a spreadsheet. The other thing you can do if you come into sponsored ads and go to bulk operations, this is really where we can upload our mass changes using bulk flat files. This is something that's been cultivated and automated by Brett at FBA Excel and incorporated into the pay-per-click dominator section of this course, as well as the Apex section. They're amazing tools. It really gives you a ton of flexibility, but Brett's automated a lot of cool things behind the scenes. But once you get a spit out from either one of those strategies, this is basically where you would come in and choose a file to actually upload your bulk file for any changes you're going to make. This is also where you manage stores if you want to click on this section. There's measuring and reporting if you wanted to get into Amazon attribution, which we'll cover in the external traffic section. And then there's also your creatives. So all of your creative assets that you want to upload, your videos, your photos, things like that for sponsored brand campaigns can all be uploaded here. So the next topic is really how to optimize your actual bids. And there's really two things that we want to do when we're optimizing bids. We want to identify winning keywords, we want to identify losing keywords, and we want to optimize both our bids and our budgets for the winners, and our bids and budgets for ones that are beyond the profitability threshold that we set for a particular SKU and for a particular phase of your ASIN's life. So the first thing here is just identifying the winners. So there's kind of three ways that we do it, especially using the Apex pay-per-click tool, but you can really do this using even manual stuff or Helium 10 software, whatever you want to look at. But top targets are generally those that have at least 5 or more orders and less than 45% or even less than break-even ACoS. Typically, those are going to be those Pareto keywords that we talked about, the 20% that bring 80% of the performance and sales. We want to identify those, especially if there's been new emerging top targets that have come from our auto, phrase, and broad campaigns. We want to identify those, migrate them to a single keyword campaign. That way we can bulk up the budget of that particular campaign and the budget for that keyword if we want. And we can also optimize our bids and refine them even more to make these keywords even more profitable. The second is top placements. And those are really those that have 2 times the orders of the second placement and 5 or more orders. That can really help us get optimized placement for particular keywords and identify those. Then the final, which may not show up in the top targets, are going to be the top conversion rate keywords. So these are typically ones that have north of 8% conversion rate. Kind of depends a little bit on the product and what's great, but generally 8% or more is a good metric. And then it's less than 35% ACoS. So let's say that through our auto, broad, and phrase campaign, we've just got a keyword that has 2 sales, it's humming at a 10% conversion rate, and the ACoS is 20%. We want to graduate those similar to the top targets to their own isolated single keyword campaign, give it a dedicated budget, give it dedicated bid optimization strategies, and let that thing go. And hopefully we'll uncover that as a new high velocity keyword that we can really push some budget at. We also want to identify losers as part of our bid optimization. So if it's got bad click-through rate, so let's say that it's got 2,500 impressions, so it's been served up to 2,500 plus people, and it's got a click-through rate of less than 0.18%. Again, you can select your own depending on your own criteria, but usually less than 0.2 is not great. And it's got 0 conversions, that's probably a bad word. We can probably negate that and kind of add that to the no-fly list, so to speak. There's also high spend keywords, right? Which is typically those where you spent $50 or more and had 0 conversions. Another thing, if you've got a higher ticket product, let's say it's a $100 product, if you've spent $100 on a particular keyword and still don't have a conversion, that's probably a good sign that you need to dramatically reduce the bids and or negate that keyword. And then finally, there's the high click ones. So you've got a lot of people that are actually clicking on the ad, but they're not converting. And typically after you've seen about 35 clicks, depending on the product, it's time to kind of zero out the conversions. One caveat to this is if you've got, again, a high ticket product and maybe the conversion rate on average is only going to be about 3%, you may want to bump that up to about 100 clicks for those higher ticket ones just to fully let it kind of vet itself. But generally speaking, the high click ones, we want to, again, optimize the bids down and or negate those keywords. So in terms of optimizing your bids for performance, there's a number of different bidding strategies and optimizations that you can leverage. There's 3 core ones that we can kind of chat about here. I would also just say that you may want to get more aggressive with your ACoS and your bidding strategies at different moments in time. So for a new product, you may have a higher bid and you may actually have a much higher ACoS threshold for what you're willing to accept. Or if, say, you've got a product that's slumping and you want to really get aggressive and go after some competitors and go after some keywords, you may be open to actually losing money and having, again, a higher ACoS target than you would before. Versus conservative approaches that you want to really just kind of make sure that you're optimizing your money and you're not overdoing it. In that case, you may have more conservative ACoS targets and or bidding strategies. So the first one is probably the most conservative, which is basically this concept of an inch up or an iterative bidding strategy. So this is where you basically start low and then you slowly incrementally work your way up in small increments until you kind of find that sweet spot where you're actually converting well for a word. So you may start off at, like, say 50 cents bids. Let's say that the average for that category is like $2. You start off low, you start at like 50 cents. And then you wait 2-3 days, and if you don't get enough impressions or clicks or data, then you basically increase it 3 to 5 cents. So maybe you bump it up to 55 cents, wait for 2-3 more days, add it again, and you keep on slowly inching up until, again, you find that sweet spot. The one good thing about this is it's really, really optimal for budgets, especially if you don't have a ton of money to spend and you don't want to get off the rails with your spend. The challenge is you do have to wait for the data to accumulate, which is especially kind of troublesome during a launch when you want to really optimize that honeymoon period. The next, which is a very common one, Ad Badger, and Michael at Ad Badger, who's pretty famous in the Amazon pay-per-click world, kind of really started talking about this, or he's the first one that I heard talk about this. And it's really about taking a target ACoS and bidding based on that target ACoS. So what's the maximum you'd be willing to bid to hit a particular target ACoS? And if you're over that target ACoS, you basically bring the bid down to that optimal level. And if you're under the target ACoS, you basically bring that bid up. So it's kind of over time, and on a long enough timeline, you start to get right around whatever that ACoS target is. So let's say that you're launching a product and you want to hit the threshold at like 60%. You don't want to go any worse than that. You could set it at 60%, and then in the preceding weeks, the bids would optimize down to that 60% level. Vice versa, if you wanted to really run lean and get it down to a break even or lower, you set that target ACoS, and again, on a long enough timeline, usually weeks and or months, it would slowly incrementally optimize towards that target ACoS amount. The third that we'll talk about in this course and really leverage a lot, again, an innovation from Brett, and he's included it into the Apex and actually calls it an Apex bidding method within that tool, is what's called like a waterfall method. So it's very similar to the target ACoS method, but it's a little bit more conservative. So this one, if you're over the actual ACoS target that you set, it will actually reduce the bid kind of per normal. But it also lets you set a medium ACoS target, so like a high, medium, low. And if it's above that medium ACoS target, you can actually set the amount that it will increase. This is really good if, say, you've got a product and a keyword and you convert right away on it, and then the ACoS is like 7%. It's going to go wild and really increase your bid to get to that target percentage because it doesn't have a lot of data and you've got a quick conversion. That iterative method basically makes it so that you only increase the bid by 110% at a time, assuming that it's in that sweet spot or better for your target ACoS. So it really helps you rein in those bids when you're below a target ACoS so it doesn't get out of hand. So these three we're going to talk about. You can use software for these. You can use your own formulas and bulk sheets. Obviously for the pay-per-click Dominator as well as for Apex, there's a lot of this automated in that we'll talk about, but I at least wanted to kind of foundationally set up how we think about bid strategies and optimizations over time. In terms of the timing you do this, it kind of depends on your team, complexity, how aggressive you want to get. We're typically running bids on a daily or every couple day basis during the work week using Apex, but you may want to do this where you're kind of checking once a week, once a month if you're kind of low on time. Or again, we'll also talk about the Helium 10 tool, which has its own method for optimizing, and it's really going to use more of a method like this target ACoS. So you don't really get to dictate or fully understand how the bidding algo is working, but it's going to do something very similar to this. And in that case, you can kind of set it and forget it. So we're now going to get into the actual strategies that you can deploy in the, whether it be software or Brett's tools that are part of this course that you can leverage.